Hello and welcome back to the Fastest Podcast. I'm your host Jazz and I'm joined today by Pigeon and Dan. And this is another segment of our team review series. Today we will be covering Visa Cash App Racing Bulls. VCARB or Racing Bulls for short. We're not sure which one we're supposed to call them. We've covered Alpine, Sauber, Haas, Aston Martin, and now we are on to VCARB. A little bit about their season. They've had a bit of a rocky one. They've obviously had their podium with Isack Hadjar, very impressive. Bit of a teammate swap at the beginning of the season. We will definitely be talking about that. They've had personnel changes. They've had a rocky time, but ultimately it's been a very impressive season for them. You know, they've sort of carved their own identity slightly away from just being the Red Bull Junior team, which has been very nice to see. So let's start off. What did you guys think of the VCARB season?
Solid.
Take it away.
Very solid.
Very solid.
I mean, in a season where qualifying really matters, they really hit the nail on the head. I think Hadjar has a perfect record for that. I think he had 18 Q2 appearances or something.
I mean, he had the longest run, and then I think, unfortunately, it did end, but he had a very impressive Q3 run.
Yeah.
Like, record-breaking at the point that it was.
Yeah. And then, I mean, qualifying was important. You could see both VCARBs were up there towards the end of the season. Lawson had a bit of a rocky time at the start of it. I mean, not really surprise given what he had to go through in the first two races alone, but I think we joked that the Racing Bulls car was better than the Red Bull, but I genuinely believe that especially for the less experienced drivers, that was the better car.
Absolutely. I mean, otherwise you were driving the Max Verstappen machine, so I think that probably was the preferable choice. I don't know. Ask Yuki Tsunoda. I'm sure he will tell us what he thinks on that matter. Dan, what did you make of the VCARB season?
Yeah, I mean, Pigeon said it. It was solid, but unspectacular. Minus Sandvort, I would say. You know, Hadjar did very well. He scored 50 odd points in his rookie season, and he performed well. And you know, I say this with a pinch of salt, but he did outperform his more experienced teammate in Liam Lawson. I think obviously Lawson's had 10, 11 races more experience, but it all counts. And you know, I was a critic of Hadjar. I wasn't sure that he was going to cut it in F1, and it looked like he had proved me right in Australia. He just had an absolute disaster, a nightmare. But he showed character and he bounced back from it, and he had a very good season. And I think we pretty much all agreed that he was probably Rookie of the Year. Lawson didn't work out in Red Bull, obviously, but dropped after 2 races. It was harsh. It obviously broke his confidence. And he had a couple of good performances. I think Austria and Baku were the 2 main ones that shone out. But overall, I think Lawson will be a little bit disappointed with this season to be beaten by, you know, a rookie who just come in. You know, people class him as a rookie. I personally don't, because he has done 11 races. And to be beaten by Hadjar, and it was convincingly, it was by about 13 to 15 points, I think it was.
Yeah,
13. And you know, that's big, you know, when your top drivers only scored 50 odd points, it's a big difference. So I think he'll be a little bit disappointed, and he'll look where he could bounce back next season and improve, because up against Lindblad, there's nowhere to hide now for him next year.
That is true. What I do wonder, though, is in an alternate universe where Lawson had been given more time in that Red Bull, do you think that he would have done better than Tsunoda? Would he have been able to get consistency in there, get some pace?
No.
No, I mean, we've seen the steady decline of the Red Bull second seat, haven't we? You know, we saw, and that's gone back a long way, even from, you know, Ricciardo choosing to leave Red Bull, and that's kind of trickled down all the way to where we're at now, which I would say is probably rock bottom. So it can only get better next year, I think, given the fact that it's a whole new car, whole new regulations there. So for Hadjar, I think, I've said this before on the podcast, I think if you were going to be Max Verstappen's teammate, next year is probably the year that you'd be okay with doing that, and potentially having to sacrifice yourself a little bit, because everything's new and hopefully the car won't just be what it has been. Perez came in and he had a pretty good go of things. He won races. That was the closest that we've seen a teammate be. And 2024, it just went wrong. We've kind of seen the repercussions of that, and it's kind of trickled down to where we are now with the state of things. So I think, like you say, VCARB was probably the place to be. But for Lawson next year, I'm really fascinated to see what he can do against Lindblad, because Lindblad is, I think, very talented. I don't know if maybe they promoted him too early. Time will kind of tell on that front. But given the season that he had against Hadjar, I would say, when the car showed pace, they were quite on par. We saw them quite close together in the top 10 at times. But I would say it was probably Hadjar that got the most out of the car when they weren't in kind of ideal conditions. What do you guys think on that?
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I mean, I'm not going to say that Lawson at any point was better than Hadjar. But what I will say is that he was always close. He wasn't miles off in any of the sessions. I mean, of course, he had Q1 exits and whatnot, but he was always kind of there behind Hadjar, and he kind of scored points consistently, which is really important in F1 nowadays, to be consistent. I think that throughout the kind of the middle part of the season, he was pretty strong, scoring Q3, scoring points. That P5 in Baku was his moment of the year, I believe. So that was interesting to see, that both of those rookies could, and I'm calling him a rookie now, make of it whatever you want. But both of those drivers did really well in that car.
I think as well, it's interesting to factor in the fact that Hadjar did have a cleaner season, I would say, than what Lawson had. A lot of the time when you see the little FIA noted banner come through, you more often than not did see Lawson's name on there in the order. How do you think that will translate into 2026? I know we've been talking a lot about 2026 in general in this whole review series, but again, it's been a bit of a filler year, 2025.
Lawson v Perez, part 4 incoming.
They'll find each other on the track somehow. I'm sure of it. But yeah, no, I think. What do I think? I think a lot of things. I'm going to edit this bit out.
I think that Lawson, he needs to sharpen up his will-to-will racing. There's too many times also you hear him complaining on the radio that it's someone else's fault. Really, it isn't. Look, he's obviously a talented driver. There is something about him. Otherwise, he wouldn't still be at Red Bull, because we know how ruthless they are. But he really, really needs to impress next year. This year, I felt that it took him a while to get into the groove once he was at Racing Bulls. And I think Monaco was his first points. And that was, because of the whole strategy, and you couldn't pass and people were driving 3 seconds a lap slower. So take that one with a pinch of salt. So it did take him a while to adapt and to start scoring points. And then in the European bit, he did up his game a little bit, and then it dipped again. And then towards the end of the season, with maybe tracks he knew better again, it went up again. So look, he just needs more consistency and to stop finding himself in trouble.
That's a good summary, yeah.
Yeah, I would say The same thing. I mean, with Hadjar, he had a pretty consistently strong season. Out of all the rookies, he's probably shown the most consistency, which is, I think, something that the team really needed. You know, they are known for being that junior team to Red Bull, and he now has been promoted, depending on how you choose to look at these things. So I think what they really needed was an Isack Hadjar to come in and do what he did. Where Lawson is concerned, I remember watching him in F2 and thinking, I'd like to see him in F1. And then he came to F1 and I kind of thought, I'd like to see him not in F1 anymore. But I think he does have that something. And I would like next year to see what the something is. Because like you say, Red Bull don't mess around. If they weren't convinced, he wouldn't be there. We know that much. So I am interested to see how this season that they both had really carries over next year, and bringing in Lindblad as well. Nowhere to hide, like you guys have said. What were your standout races then for VCARB? Let's start with best race, maybe.
For me, it was Dutch Grand Prix. Hadjar
Has to
putting
be.
that car on P4, and then staying within that shot the entire race to then get the opportunity to when Lando retired. And we had the old Sainz v Lawson incident, which for me is the story of what could have been. It was a silly incident racing, but yeah, for me, Zandvoort was the best race from VCARB.
I would say there have been a few disappointing results for VCARB along the way. And you could look to either the first race of the season or the last race of the season, however you want to go about it. You know, in Abu Dhabi, they didn't have much pace. And in Australia, you just need to look at the strategy that they had with Tsunoda, because I think he was running quite high in the points. He was battling with the Ferraris at one point, and then they didn't put him on the right tyre at the right time, and he dropped out of the points. So, you know, what could have been a decent haul, I think, possibly a P6 or 7 was on the cards. So, depending which way you want to look at it, you know, you had the and I think this was a bit of a theme throughout the season for VCARB. They had the times where they had the lack of pace, and they had the other times where they got the strategy wrong, and those two didn't coincide with each other. So if they were having a good race, the strategy was wrong, and then if they were having, you know, not the best pace wise, they sometimes got the strategy right and were able to pull a result out of the bag. So, you know, it was a mixed season. They've got much to learn. We've now got Alan Permain as their team principal. You know, again, it's a solid pair of hands to take that team forwards as they want to break away from being known as the sister team. So, going forward, future could be good with the driver pairing they've got, but also the two of them are going to be pitting against each other. So, in theory, it should make them competitive for next year.
I would like to touch on Alan Permain slightly just before we wrap this up, because, like you say, very, very capable pair of hands. He is very, very seasoned in the sport, and I trust him. I think that's a really good fit, actually, to put him in that team, because they really have carved out a brand identity. You know, they are very sort of fan-forward, fan-focused, and they feel very, like, fresh, which I know maybe seems a bit strange because technically they have been in sport for a very long time now. But AlphaTauri always felt quite a bit like a boarding school, and it kind of felt a bit stuffy, and you're only there for one reason, because you want a Red Bull seat. And now I think with VCARB, they've kind of made it its own thing a little bit. It obviously still is the Red Bull junior team, sister team, but I think we are making steps in maybe trying to get away from that a little bit and succeeding. I think they're on the right track with that. I think that's everything for VCARB, I think, for now. Anything else you guys want to say about VCARB?
Quick shout out to Lawson in Baku qualifying.
Yay! Thank you for watching. In the meantime, you can find us on social media: Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, X, Twitter, whatever you call it. You can find us there. Also, keep an eye on our website for any updates. And if you are missing F1 as much as we all are, you can keep up with kind of the season that we've had. All of our reviews are on our YouTube channel. And of course, check out our other team reviews. We will have more coming for you soon. Thank you so much for watching, and we will see you in the next one.